morning sun had barely risen when Tyrell woke up. At 16, he was already used to early mornings on the family farm. Their rooster, old Pete, wasn't even awake yet when Tyrell pulled on his work boots and headed outside to help his father, the owl. Air felt heavy with coming rain as Tyrell and his dad worked to fix their old tractor. They needed it running before the storm hit. With hands already calloused from years of farm work, Tyrell held the flashlight while his father tightened bolts underneath the rumbling machine. "Dad, I've got to get ready for school soon," Tyrell said, glancing at his watch. School was a 40-minute drive away and first period started at 8 sharp. His father slid out from under the tractor, his face streaked with grease. "Almost done, son. Just need your help with one more thing." By the time they finished, Tyrell barely had time to wash his hands before grabbing his backpack. No time for a shower or breakfast. He jumped into his dad's pickup truck, the same one they used to haul feed and supplies. "Sorry for making you late," his father said as they sped down the country road. Rain started to fall, first as tiny drops, then as sheets across the windshield. "It's okay, Dad, the tractor needed fixing." Tyrell's dad dropped him off at Westridge Academy at 8:10 a.m. The fancy brick building with its green lawns looked like something from a movie. Most kids arrived in shiny cars driven by parents in business suits or nannies. Tyrell was the only student whose dad wore overalls to drop off. He ran through the rain toward his first class, English with Mrs. Blackwell. His boots left small muddy prints on the polished hallway floor. A janitor noticed and frowned, but Tyrell was too worried about being late to stop and clean up. When he pushed open the classroom door, 25 pairs of eyes turned to look at him. "Well, well," Mrs. Blackwell said, putting down her chalk. "How nice of you to join us, Mr. Williams." "Sorry I'm late, ma'am," Tyrell said, catching his breath. "We had trouble with our tractor this morning, and I don't recall asking for excuses," she cut him off. Her eyes moved from his face down to his clothes. His jeans had mud splattered on the knees, and his shirt wasn't perfectly tucked in. "Your appearance is completely unacceptable for this institution." Tyrell stood frozen, aware of the other students watching. Most wore the unofficial school uniform, expensive polo shirts and pressed khakis. He was the only one in work boots and jeans, though the school had no official dress code. "But the handbook says," he started. "Do not talk back to me," Mrs. Blackwell snapped. "This is exactly the kind of disrespect I've been noting all semester." Tyrell felt his face grow hot. He hadn't been disrespectful. He'd gotten all A's on his papers and always raised his hand before speaking. The truth was, Mrs. Blackwell had seemed to dislike him from day one, when he'd mentioned his family's farm during introductions. "Go to Principal Wilson's office right now," she said, writing quickly on a pink slip. "And take this with you." As Tyrell walked out, he heard whispers behind him. He'd worked so hard to fit in at this school, staying up late to finish perfect assignments, never complaining about the long commute. His parents had scraped together tuition money because Westridge Academy opened doors to good colleges. Now it was all falling apart. Principal Wilson barely looked up when Tyrell entered his office. He just took the pink slip and sighed. "Mrs. Blackwell says you've been disruptive in class repeatedly," he said, already typing something on his computer. "She's recommending a 3-day suspension." "But sir, I've never been in trouble before," Tyrell protested. "I was just late. Because of farm work and my clothes got a little muddy. I can clean them up." The principal glanced at him, taking in the mud, the worn boots, the calloused hands. Something like disgust flickered across his face. "Mrs. Blackwell is our most experienced teacher," he said flatly. "If she says there's been an ongoing problem, I believe her. You need to learn how to fit in here if you want to succeed." The way he said fit in made it clear he wasn't just talking about clothes or being on time. 3-day suspension starting now. I'm calling your parents to pick you up." Tyrell sat in the hard plastic chair outside the principal's office for almost an hour before his dad arrived, still in his work clothes. The secretary kept glancing at his father's muddy boots on the clean floor. The rain had stopped by the time they walked to the truck, but Tyrell felt a storm inside him. "Want to tell me what happened?" his father asked, eyes on the road as they headed home. Tyrell told him everything, trying to keep his voice steady. How Mrs. Blackwell had been finding reasons to criticize him all semester. How today she'd finally found an excuse to get him in real trouble. How the principal hadn't even looked at his spotless record. His father's hands tightened on the steering wheel, but his voice stayed calm. "You did nothing wrong, son. But Dad, this could mess up everything. My grades, college recommendations." Tyrell's voice finally broke. "We'll figure it out," his father said. The expression on his weathered face was hard to read, but his eyes were determined. "I think it's time to make a call." When they got home, Tyrell's father didn't head back to the fields. Instead, he went straight to the phone in the kitchen. Tyrell heard only the beginning of the conversation as he walked upstairs. "Hello, Pop. We've got a situation here with Tyrell's school. I think we need your help." The next morning at Westridge Academy started like any other school day. Students hurried through the gates, teachers clutched coffee cups, and hall monitors checked for proper uniforms. No one paid much attention when the school gates opened, again at 9:30 a.m., until they heard the purr of an engine that sounded nothing like the usual parent cars. Heads turned as a gleaming black Rolls-Royce Phantom rolled slowly up the school's circular driveway. The morning sun bounced off its polished surface, making it shine like a dark jewel against the ordinary school backdrop. Students stopped mid-conversation. Teachers paused in the hallways. Even the school security guard stood straighter. The car came to a perfect stop directly in front of the main entrance. A driver in a crisp black uniform stepped out and walked around to open the rear passenger door. From where they stood, students pressed their faces against classroom windows, straining to see who would emerge. An older gentleman stepped out, moving with the slow, deliberate steps of someone in his 70s, but with a straight back and confident bearing that commanded attention. He wore a perfectly tailored dark blue suit that probably cost more than a teacher's monthly salary. His hair was snow white, cut short and neat, and his dark skin had the deep richness that comes with age and wisdom. "Who is that?" whispered a student to her friend. "No idea," the friend replied. "But whoever he is, he's somebody important." The old man thanked his driver and walked toward the school entrance without hesitation, like someone who knew exactly where he was going and why. The security guard, who usually stopped all visitors, simply held the door open with a respectful nod. Inside the school office, the secretary looked up from her computer, startled to see such an imposing figure standing before her desk. "Good morning," the gentleman said, his voice deep and clear. "My name is Dr. Thomas Williams. I'm here to see Principal Wilson regarding my grandson, Tyrell." The secretary blinked in confusion. "Tyrell Williams? The student who was suspended yesterday?" "The very same," Dr. Williams confirmed with a gentle smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Do you have an appointment, sir?" she asked, suddenly nervous. "I believe my son called ahead this morning." The secretary checked the schedule and nodded, quickly. "Yes, sir. I'll inform Principal Wilson you're here." As Dr. Williams took a seat in the waiting area, students passing by the office slowed down to stare. One boy recognized him and gasped, frantically typing on his phone. Within minutes, whispers spread through the school hallways like wildfire. "That's Dr. Thomas Williams." The Thomas Williams? The founder of Green Life Biotech? The billionaire? What's he doing here? Few people at Westridge Academy knew that Tyrell's grandfather was actually one of the richest men in the state. Dr. Williams had started his career as a brilliant agricultural scientist before founding a company that revolutionized sustainable farming practices. Green Life Biotech employed thousands of people across the country and had operations on 3 continents. But Dr. Williams had raised his son Robert with different values. Robert had grown up working on the family's actual farm, away from corporate headquarters and business meetings. Dr. Williams wanted his son to understand the soil, to value hard work over money, and to build character before wealth. Robert had chosen to stay on the farm even after college, raising his own son Tyrell with the same principles. Tyrell had never mentioned his grandfather's status to anyone at school. His family believed that success should come from your own work, not from whose grandson you were. Dr. Williams visited the farm often, but he arrived in an old pickup truck wearing overalls and work boots, not in a Rolls-Royce wearing a tailored suit. Today was different. Principal Wilson emerged from his office looking slightly flustered. "Dr. Williams, I'm Principal Wilson. Please come in." Dr. Williams stood and straightened his suit jacket. "Thank you. I'd also like Mrs. Blackwell to join us. I understand she's the teacher who recommended my grandson's suspension." The principal hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Of course, I'll have someone get her right away." As they waited for Mrs. Blackwell in the principal's spacious office, Dr. Williams looked around at the awards and certificates displayed on the walls. "Westridge Academy prides itself on excellence, I see." "Yes, sir. We have very high standards." "Here. High standards are important," Dr. Williams agreed. "So is fairness." Mrs. Blackwell arrived a few minutes later, looking confused and slightly annoyed until she saw the distinguished visitor. Her expression shifted instantly to a professional smile. "Mrs. Blackwell, this is Dr. Thomas Williams, Tyrell's grandfather," Principal Wilson said. "A pleasure," she said, extending her hand. "I wasn't aware of Tyrell's family connections." "My grandson doesn't trade on family connections," Dr. Williams replied evenly, shaking her hand briefly. "He was raised to stand on his own merits. That's why I find yesterday's event so troubling." Outside in the hallway, students were whispering and pulling up information on their phones. Articles about Dr. Williams appeared on screens. Pictures of him receiving awards, opening research facilities, donating millions to university programs. One photo showed him shaking hands with the president. Another showed him receiving an honorary doctorate. The boy who had first recognized him was explaining to a growing crowd, "My dad works for Green Life Biotech. Dr. Williams is like super important. He's worth billions, but he's also really smart. He developed some special seeds that can grow with way less water. My dad says he's changed farming forever." Inside the principal's office, Dr. Williams placed a leather portfolio on the desk and opened it carefully. "Before we discuss my grandson's suspension, I'd like to review a few things." The atmosphere in Principal Wilson's office was tense as Dr. Williams opened his leather portfolio. The distinguished visitor moved with deliberate calm, arranging several documents on the desk, while Principal Wilson and Mrs. Blackwell watched in uncomfortable silence. "First," Dr. Williams said, "my grandson's complete academic record." He slid forward a stack of papers showing all of Tyrell's grades since elementary school. Every report card showed A's and B's, with glowing comments from teachers about his work ethic and positive attitude. "As you can see, Tyrell has maintained excellent grades despite waking up at 5 a.m. most days to help on our farm before commuting 40 minutes to school." Principal Wilson nodded, scanning the impressive record. "Yes, Tyrell is certainly a good student academically." "Next," Dr. Williams continued, "his disciplinary record before yesterday." He placed another document on the desk. It was completely blank except for the heading. Not a single detention, not one complaint from any teacher, not even a late homework assignment until yesterday's incident. Mrs. Blackwell shifted in her seat. "Academic performance and past behavior don't excuse disruption in my classroom." "I agree completely," Dr. Williams said, his voice still calm but with an edge of steel beneath the politeness. "Which brings me to this." He pulled out a small voice recorder from his portfolio and placed it on the desk. "Tyrell records all his classes for study purposes. He registered this practice with the school board last year, following proper procedures. I have the approved permission form right here." He slid another document forward. Principal Wilson examined it, then nodded, reluctantly. "This recording is from yesterday morning." Dr. Williams pressed play. The sound quality was surprisingly clear. They heard Tyrell's voice apologizing for being late, attempting to explain about the tractor. Then came Mrs. Blackwell's cutting response, her tone dripping with disdain as she commented on his appearance. Principal Wilson's eyebrows rose as he listened. Mrs. Blackwell's face grew increasingly red. Dr. Williams stopped the recording. "Now I have another recording from 3 weeks ago when another student, a boy named Taylor Henderson, arrived 10 minutes late." He pressed play again. The same classroom, the same teacher, but a completely different tone. They heard Mrs. Blackwell's voice. Taylor, please take your seat quietly. See me after class about what you missed. The contrast was striking. Dr. Williams stopped the recording and looked directly at Mrs. Blackwell. I have 5 more examples of students arriving late to your class. In each case, you responded with patience and understanding. Only my grandson received public humiliation and punishment. The silence in the room was heavy. Principal Wilson cleared his throat. Dr. Williams, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not finished, Dr. Williams said quietly. Next, I have printouts of the school dress code policy. He placed the school handbook on the desk, opened to the relevant page. There is no rule against work boots or jeans. There is no rule against mud on clothes. The only clothing requirements are that attire must be clean, modest, and not disruptive. Muddy clothes are not clean, Mrs. Blackwell interjected. My grandson's clothes were clean when he put them on at 5 a.m. The mud was from helping his father fix essential farm equipment in the rain. It was on his knees and boots only, not smeared across the classroom. Dr. Williams pulled out one more document. This is a list of 3 other students who arrived with muddy sports uniforms this semester after morning practice. All 3 were allowed to attend class without comment. Principal Wilson's face had grown increasingly uncomfortable. Dr. Williams, what exactly are you suggesting? The elderly man leaned forward, his eyes intense. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating clearly that my grandson has been treated differently from other students. The question is why? Mrs. Blackwell finally spoke up, her voice defensive. I hold all my students to high standards. Tyrell has been consistently disruptive. In what way? Dr. Williams interrupted. Give me specific examples. She hesitated. His whole attitude is wrong for Westridge. The way he talks about farm life during discussions, bringing up his family's outdated farming methods when we discussed modern agriculture in class. Outdated? Dr. Williams raised an eyebrow. My grandson's family uses regenerative agriculture techniques that are actually more advanced than most industrial methods. His father has consulted for the Department of Agriculture on sustainable farming practices. He let that sink in before continuing. But even if their methods were outdated, as you put it, how does sharing his life experience count as disruption? Mrs. Blackwell had no answer. I think, Dr. Williams said slowly, that you made assumptions about my grandson based on his background. You decided that a farmer's son didn't belong at Westridge Academy, regardless of his grades or behavior. Outside, in the hallway, a small crowd of students had gathered, pretending to organize books in their lockers while straining to hear what was happening inside. The word had spread throughout the school about who was visiting. Teachers tried to disperse the onlookers, but new students kept replacing those who left. Inside, Principal Wilson attempted to regain control of the situation. Dr. Williams, I understand your concerns. Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. This is not a misunderstanding, Dr. Williams said firmly. This is bias, plain and simple, and it's not just about Tyrell. How many other students have faced similar treatment without having a grandfather who can arrive in a Rolls Royce to demand answers? He reached into his portfolio one last time and pulled out a letter. I've scheduled a meeting with the full school board for this afternoon. I was going to present all this evidence there, but I wanted to give you both the courtesy of hearing it first. Mrs. Blackwell paled. Principal Wilson loosened his tie. What do you want? The principal asked quietly. Dr. Williams leaned back in his chair. I don't want revenge. I don't want to see anyone fired. What I want is for Westridge Academy to become the institution it claims to be in its mission statement. He tapped the school handbook. One that values every student equally and judges them solely on their merits and character. Principal Wilson nodded slowly. What do you propose? Dr. Williams leaned forward, resting his weathered hands on Principal Wilson's desk. Despite being in his 70s, his eyes were sharp and clear. Instead of demanding that people lose their jobs, I want to solve the real problem, Principal. Wilson looked relieved. Mrs. Blackwell, who had been sitting stiffly in her chair, relaxed slightly. What I propose, Dr. Williams continued, is a school-wide program about fairness and hidden bias. Not just a one-day assembly that everyone Forgets but real lasting change. He pulled a business card from his suit pocket and placed it on the desk. This is Dr. Lisa Chen. She's an expert in educational equality. Her team can design a training program for all Westridge staff. That sounds expensive, Principal Wilson said carefully. Green Life Biotech will cover all costs, Dr. Williams replied. But that's only part of my proposal. He outlined his full plan. A complete review of all school disciplinary actions from the past 5 years to look for patterns of unfair treatment. A new system requiring documentation for all punishments. Regular meetings between students, parents, and teachers to discuss school culture. And a scholarship program for 5 farming families each year. The scholarship part is personal, Dr. Williams admitted, but the rest is about making sure every student is treated with respect, regardless of their background. Principal Wilson considered the proposal. Finally, he nodded. I'll take this to the school board with my full support. Dr. Williams turned to Mrs. Blackwell. And you? The teacher had been quiet, her face a mix of emotions. I don't believe I'm biased, she said finally. I've always prided myself on maintaining high standards. High standards are important, Dr. Williams agreed, but they must be the same for everyone. Will you participate in the training program? Mrs. Blackwell looked at him for a long moment. Yes, she said quietly. I will. Dr. Williams stood, extending his hand to both of them. Then my grandson's suspension is canceled, and he returns to school tomorrow as if nothing happened. Of course, Principal Wilson agreed quickly. As Dr. Williams left the office, students scattered from the hallway pretending they hadn't been listening. The elderly man smiled faintly as he walked through the now busy corridor. His driver was waiting, with the car door open. How did it go, sir? The driver asked. Better than expected, Joe. Let's head to the farm. The transformation at Westridge Academy began the very next day. The suspension was erased from Terrell's record, and he returned to school, walking into Mrs. Blackwell's English class with his head held high. The other students watched him with new interest, having heard rumors about his powerful grandfather. To everyone's surprise, Mrs. Blackwell greeted him with a nod. Good morning, Tyrell. Please take your seat. The class proceeded. Normally, except Mrs. Blackwell seemed more careful about calling on different students. When Tyrell raised his hand to answer a question about the farming scene in their assigned novel, she listened attentively to his perspective. At lunch, Tyrell found himself surrounded by curious classmates. Is it true your grandfather owns Green Life Biotech? Asked a boy named Lee. Yes, Tyrell said simply. Then why do you still live on a farm and wear those old boots? Another student asked. Tyrell thought about it. Because farming isn't just my family's past. It's our present and future too. My grandfather started as a scientist trying to help farmers. He never wanted us to forget where we came from. Over the next few weeks, Westridge Academy began to change. Dr. Chen and her team started working with teachers in small groups. At first, some staff members were defensive, but most became engaged in honest conversations about their own hidden assumptions. Principal Wilson surprised everyone by fully embracing the program. He shared a personal story during a faculty meeting about growing up poor and hiding it from his college classmates. I know what it's like to feel judged for your background, he admitted. I should have been more alert to it happening in our school. Mrs. Blackwell's transformation was slower and more complicated. She participated in the training sessions but often argued with Dr. Chen. Yet bit by bit, she began to notice things about her own teaching style. How she called on certain students more than others. How she made assumptions based on appearance or family names. One afternoon, she asked Tyrell to stay after class. I owe you an apology, she said, her voice stiff but sincere. I've been teaching for 25 years and I've always believed I treated everyone equally. Your grandfather's visit forced me to reconsider that belief. Tyrell nodded, not sure what to say. I grew up in a very different world, Mrs. Blackwell continued. My father was a banker, my mother a college professor. I never knew anyone who worked with their hands for a living. I think that shaped my view of what success looks like. My dad says success is doing good work you can be proud of, Tyrell offered. Doesn't matter if it's in a classroom or a field. Mrs. Blackwell smiled slightly. Your dad sounds wise. Like his father. The biggest surprise came a month later when Mrs. Blackwell announced a special project. Each student would research an innovation in their family's field of work or interest. When Tyrell presented his project on his family's regenerative farming techniques, Mrs. Blackwell asked detailed questions and suggested he submit his paper to a student science journal for near. Tyrell, the most meaningful change wasn't about himself. He noticed how differently some other students were being treated. Kids who, like him, didn't come from wealthy families or have the right clothes or connections. Before, they had been nearly invisible. Now, teachers were making real efforts to include everyone. One Friday afternoon, Principal Wilson found Tyrell in the hallway and handed him an envelope. Our first Westridge Farm Family Scholarship applications are ready. Would you mind reviewing the wording with your grandfather to make sure we got it right? Tyrell smiled. I'll ask him when he visits Sunday. He's coming for dinner, but don't worry. He'll be in his regular overalls, not a suit. Principal Wilson laughed. Tell him that's perfectly fine. It took me a while to realize this, but it's not what people wear that matters. It's who they are underneath. 3 years passed quickly at Westridge Academy. On graduation day, the school auditorium buzzed with excitement as families filled the rows of seats. Proud parents clutched programs and flowers. Grandparents adjusted their hearing aids, and younger siblings fidgeted in uncomfortable formal clothes. At the front of the auditorium, Principal Wilson stood at the podium adjusting his tie. Behind him sat the graduating seniors in their green and gold caps and gowns. Among them, Tyrell Williams looked out at the audience, searching for his family. He spotted them in the third row, his father Robert in a freshly pressed suit that still couldn't hide his farmer's build, his mother wiping happy tears before they could fall, and his grandfather, Dr. Williams, looking distinguished but choosing to wear a simple dark suit rather than anything flashy. Before we begin the ceremony, Principal Wilson announced, I want to acknowledge some special changes at Westridge Academy over the past 3 years. He gestured toward a new plaque on the wall. The Fairness in Education Initiative has become a model program that 15 other schools in our state have now adopted. What began as one family's stand against unfair treatment has grown into something that's changing education across our region. Many eyes in the audience turned toward Dr. Williams, who nodded slightly but kept his attention focused on his grandson. And now, Principal Wilson continued, I'm proud to introduce our class valedictorian, who maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA while also founding our student advocacy group, which has become an essential part of our school community. Please welcome Tyrell Williams. The applause was genuine as Tyrell approached the podium. He looked different from the mud-splattered boy who had been suspended 3 years earlier. Taller, more confident, but with the same thoughtful eyes and strong hands that showed he still worked the land alongside his studies. Thank you, Tyrell said, adjusting the microphone. When I came to Westridge Academy 4 years ago, I wasn't sure I belonged here. I was just a farm kid with big dreams. He paused, looking over the audience. I soon learned that where we come from shapes us, but it doesn't define our limits. My family taught me the value of hard work in the fields. Westridge taught me how to apply that same work ethic to my education. In the audience, Mrs. Blackwell listened intently. She still taught English at Westridge, but with a different approach. The bias training had changed her more than anyone expected. She had become one of the strongest supporters of the Fairness Initiative, eventually leading workshops herself for new teachers. We all carry assumptions about others, Tyrell continued. Sometimes we don't even realize they're there until someone points them out. 3 years ago, this school faced a moment of truth about those assumptions. What makes Westridge special isn't that we had problems. Every school does. What makes it special is how we responded to those problems. He gestured toward his classmates. Look at us now. Our class includes future doctors, mechanics, writers, scientists, and yes, farmers. We come from mansions and apartments, from farms and city blocks. We have different skin colors, different religions, different backgrounds. But we've learned to see beyond those differences to the things that really matter: character, effort, and how we treat each other. In the back row, a group of younger students watched attentively. They were the first recipients of the Farm Family Scholarships, students who might never have attended Westridge without the program Dr. Williams had created. For them, Tyrell wasn't just a valedictorian, but proof that they belonged here too. As we leave Westridge today, Tyrell said, his voice growing more passionate, we take with us not just knowledge from books, but lessons about life. We've learned that standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. We've learned that real change doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, patience, and forgiveness. He looked directly at Mrs. Blackwell and smiled, slightly. She nodded in acknowledgement, her eyes glistening. Most importantly, Tyrell concluded, we've learned that true education begins when we question what we think we know about each other, when we look beyond labels and really see the person standing before us. The applause was thunderous as Tyrell returned to his seat. Principal Wilson had to wait for the crowd to quiet before continuing the ceremony. Later, as families gathered, on the lawn for photos, Tyrell found himself standing next to Mrs. Blackwell. That was quite a speech, she said. Thank you, Tyrell replied. I meant what I said about forgiveness being part of real change. Mrs. Blackwell nodded. Your grandfather is an extraordinary man. When he came to the school that day, he could have demanded my job. Instead, he offered a chance to learn and grow. Not many people would have done that. He says revenge is easy, but fixing problems is hard, Tyrell said. And he always chooses the harder path if it leads to something better. Across the lawn, Dr. Williams watched his grandson with quiet pride. Robert stood beside him, still in his suit but looking more comfortable now that the ceremony was over. He did good, didn't he, Pop? Robert said. He did, Dr. Williams agreed. But then he comes from good stock. Your decision to raise him on the farm, to teach him the value of work before wealth, that was the right choice. Robert smiled. I had a good teacher myself. A school photographer approached, asking to take a picture of Tyrell with his family. As they gathered together, grandfather in his simple dark suit, father with his work-worn hands, and Tyrell in his valedictorian cords, no one would have guessed from looking at them that the oldest man was one of the wealthiest people in the state. The real wealth, Dr. Williams thought as the camera flashed, was standing right here. Not the kind you could count in dollars, but the kind that grew over generations. Wisdom, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what was right. As the Williams family walked toward the parking lot, they passed the school sign where a new motto had been added beneath the Westridge Academy name, where every student is valued for who they are, not where they come from. It wasn't just words. It was a promise being kept day by day, year by year. And that, Dr. Williams thought, was the greatest legacy of all.